Today's unSeminary podcast episode is brought to you by Church Community Builder. I love how these guys help church leaders make and grow disciples by providing software and coaching focused on improving operational effectiveness. Church Community Builder provides leaders like me with insights into engagement of our church community, helping us close the gaps that allow people to slip away unnoticed. Visit churchcommunitybuilder.com to learn more.
Welcome to the unSeminary podcast. Are you looking for practical ministry help to drive your ministry further, faster? Have a sinking feeling that your ministry training didn't prepare you for the real world? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others in pursuit of stuff that we wish they had taught in seminary. Buckle up and let's get started with this week's unSeminary podcast.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to the unSeminary podcast. My name's Rich, the host here, and I'm just so honored that you would take some time out of your week to listen in today. We know that you're having a busy week. As we head into this weekend, you've got a lot going on, and I'm honored that you would take some time out to spend with us today. We've got a fantastic guest from a great church. I'm super pumped to have Mark Molina with us. He's from a church, Westover Hills Assembly of God Church in San Antonio, Texas. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rich. Good to be a part of it.
I'm so glad you're here. Yeah, this church has got 3 campuses. It's really a thriving church with a weekly attendance about 4,000 people. It was one of the fastest growing churches in 2014. I think also in 2015. But just a great church. And if you're not following them, you should get a chance to kind of get to know them a little bit better. Mark, why don't you tell us a little bit about the church and then also your role there? Give us a sense of the flavor of the church.
Okay. So we're in Northwest San Antonio. Started in '86, so we were out here when there was really the only thing that was out here was Seaworld, QVC, and our church, and so
That's great neighbors.
Absolutely, and so have a long history in this area. Just celebrated 30 years. 30 years will be this coming year. Mm-hmm. So our church is a very multicultural church. We kind of like to say we're colorblind.
Nice.
That's just kind of the heart of our pastor.
Right.
And really that bleeds down to our staff. So we love to express our worship. Mm-hmm. We love to just make the Bible and the weekend so relevant. We're very next gen, for kids, for students. We're very driven for the next generation. So got a great church, in a great city. Mm-hmm. A lot of, San Antonio has been known as military city USA because of all the bases.
Okay.
So we have a lot of people that come in, and we're constantly meeting people from all over because of a lot of them live in this area. Mm-hmm. This whole region of area of San Antonio, the zip code has grown quite a bit. So our church, all that to say is our church is very multicultural. Mm-hmm. And so that's a little bit of who Westover Hills is.
If people were to come on a weekend, or what would the kind of experience with the ministry, not just weekends, because I know you do midweek services. What is, give us a sense of what that experience would be like.
Well, we obviously, like any church, we want them to have a great first impression. We believe that the altar starts in the parking lot. Mm. And so we're really wanting to, before they hear the message, that they're already starting to get captivated. Mm-hmm. So we always start on time. Mm-hmm. We value people's time. Yep. We kind of create that hour and 20 minutes. We say it's the message is not how can I phrase this? The whole service is the message, not just the preaching.
Yes.
So we really feel like when people come in, from the countdown to the first strike of the drum, the first note, mm-hmm. we want God to begin to speak to people, and not just people wait for the pastor to preach or whoever mm-hmm. speak. So we feel like they're going to get just a great time of worship, mm-hmm. a time of celebration. We don't spend a lot of time on announcements, mm-hmm. And then we hopefully that they don't just get challenged, but they leave changed mm-hmm. After the service.
Very cool. And now tell us about your role there at the church. What's your job?
My role is executive pastor of ministries. So my key role, that's my title, but my key role is to just help advance the heart of our pastor. Mm. Now, there is a job description, but that is kind of a big part of what what I need to do, help do,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of carry his heart to the staff.
Mm-hmm.
I oversee the ministry staff.
Mm-hmm.
That, of course, that's children, youth, music,
Mm-hmm.
care, seniors, missions, all those
Mm-hmm.
things. I kind of help guide that and run the staff in that regard.
Well, a church of your size, there is a unique kind of culture that rotates around it. It is, you have to continue to reinforce the things that you see as valuable, and trim off that stuff that you're like, oh, that's not quite us. I wonder if we could talk through that a little bit.
Sure.
How is it that you're able to shape culture at Westover Hills?
Well, when all the pastors are together in one room, we are defenders of culture. We are implementers of culture. We look at it from the top down, from our pastor to our staff. We have got to deep seed that. We actually recognize as culture as an extra staff member. Mm-hmm. Because when people come in, we want them to feel the vibe of who we are. Mm-hmm. We often say we're not personality driven. Mm-hmm. What you see is what you get. We're going to stay consistent to who God has called us to be. Mm. We absolutely love what different churches are doing in our area. We have some phenomenal churches. Mm-hmm. And we often say, hey, we'd love for you to be a part of our church, but if not, there are great churches in our area. Mm. But we stay close to who we are, who God has called us to be. Mm-hmm. So we try to deep seed our culture and our staff, and then we got to take it and champion that to our volunteers to make sure that they're hearing who we are and what we're about. Mm-hmm.
What would you say would be some of those, maybe guide rails of your culture, things where you're like, I feel like we're pushing outside of the kind of church God's called us to be. We're becoming too much like someone else. What would be some of those things that have popped up that you've tried to kind of move back towards? And then how have you done that? How have you identified them? And then how have you kind of, found the problems and then also tried to kind of guide them back towards closer to what the culture you're trying to create?
Well, I think one area is, every church always struggles, and it's always a challenge getting volunteers. That is just the
universal.
It absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we kind of notice, if we're always being doers of tasks and not developers of people, we start to get a kind of drift from who God wants us to be. And when we're struggling with that, we feel like we're trying to carry too much, and we're not being able to let people grow in our church and help us carry the vision. And so when that happens, when we see whatever it could be, we right now on our roster of volunteers across the board, we probably have anywhere from 950 to 1,000 people that, whether it's kids, youth, children, music, that are volunteering. When we see that decline, when we don't see the heart of being extended through volunteers and people who've caught our vision, that begins to tilt us. It begins to drift, and we've got to kind of bring it back. That's one area, one example that we try to keep our crosshairs on.
Yeah, when you kind of changing direction a little bit, just talking about something different. Obviously, a church like yours is growing, and there are a lot of people coming in through the front door. How do you guys think about the backdoor problem or the backdoor issue? As a church.
Well, it is. I think we have your everyday visitor who may be a seasoned church person. They just moved to the area. But then we will always have, those secret shoppers. They're not going to fill out a card. Right. They're not going to raise their hand. So we that is an area where I think we have always had to work through with it when it regards to simulation. We try to make sure that every weekend we are providing people with what we would, in our language, a next step. Here's the next step for you. If you're new to our church, here's the next step for you. Because if we don't put that in front of people all the time, again, a lot of those secret shoppers are going to go out a back door, and they would never be on our radar. if they don't fill out a card or they don't attend like a welcome weekend, something of that regard, they may not show up on our database until they give something.
Right.
By that time, it could very easily be 7-8 months down the road, and they have not connected anywhere, and we feel like we're going to keep them. So, again, our next steps is critical to helping people move along and make sure they don't get to that back door.
What would be some of those, next steps, the kind of things that you're encouraging people to, I think that's a critical lesson. I hope for church leaders that are listening in, that providing clear, really relevant, this is what we're asking people to do is super important. What are some of those things that you're asking people to do? Some of the next steps you're asking people to take at your church?
Well, we kind of go with the approach of Andy Stanley, obvious and strategic.
Yes.
Something very easy for them to do. On the practical side, we do have every month a welcome weekend. Every month, every service, we have a place where people can stop by and get connected and find out a next step. That could be our mission statement is making new and making great. We have a making new class for people who are just brand new in the Lord, or they're kind of still that seeker. We invite them to be a part of that. We publicly announce, hey, if you're new to Christ and you're just wanting to find out, I know I'm supposed to pray, but I'm not sure how to do that. Making new class is what you need to be a part of. So it's just consistently getting them to a growth pathway. Our strategy is connecting, growing, and serving. And so we feel like the connecting is, we do a good job at that. It can always do better. But the growing, there are multiple pathways that they can do. Again, it could be a small group, get involved in ministry, taking some type of a class that we may have. All the way from your traditional Bible study to doing Zumba, just whatever it takes to get them connected with people. We feel a big church gets small real quick.
Absolutely. Now we've been off-roading there a little bit into the connection stuff. I appreciate that. What are some, back on the culture question, when you interact with your team, the people who report to you and that, that group of people, what are some of the ways that you're kind of reinforcing and ensuring that the culture is heading in the right direction?
Well, we begin every meeting with, on our agenda, it's blank, whether there's blank statements there. They fill it in. Making you, what are we about? Making you, making great.
Call from 665.
A call from somebody. That's great.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, totally fine. Not a problem at all. So you were saying on every agenda, there's a blank. So what are we making?
We're going to put our mission statement. We're going to have them fill out our core values. So we continue. In fact, we'll call on a staff member to cite the core values, to recite them. So we just keep that foundation in front of them. Right. Then we talk about let's celebrate what is happening and making you and making great in your ministries. We'll just take a couple of minutes and just always have a Control-Alt-Delete moment at the very beginning. Why we do what we do. We also implement this thought. We don't do things in our job or add things to our jobs to make our jobs easier. We're always going to focus on what is better for the people. What is better for the people? Is this better for the people? Then that's what we're going to do. So it's just kind of keeping our focus on not on a program but people, not on just keeping their hearts in front of us.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, this has been great so far. Is there anything else you want to share kind of about, culture, keeping culture pushing in the right direction before we move on with the rest of our interview?
Yeah, I just, again, it's important to us. We're defenders of culture as staff. And it's important that it's not just being carried by the heart of the lead pastor. His key leaders and the staff, they have to really just build that trust of this is what God has called our pastor to lead us in, and I can get on board with that. And so that's just something I would encourage any staff member to always keep that a matter of prayer and trust that if this is the man of God that has been placed here in this church, I need to be on board with where he's going and follow that.
This is the unSeminary podcast. Stuff you wish they taught in seminary.
Well, we're going to jump on with the rest of the episode. We call it the lightning round around here. This is the part of the show where we ask similar questions of people that have been on the show. Today we got Mark from Westover Hills Assembly of God Church, a great church in San Antonio, Texas. I'm so glad to have you on the show today, Mark. What's an online resource that you're using these days that's being particularly helpful for you?
I love to go to Because People Matter.
Okay.
It's a great, Mark Waltz is the kind of the driver in that seat. You know, he does a lot of talk about assimilation.
Yep.
That's a big area that I cover.
Right, very cool. What's a book you've read in the last 6 months, I don't know, to a year that's had an impact on your thinking and ministry?
A Sense of Urgency by John Cotter. He's
You're the second person this week that's told me that book.
Wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So that's a book. That's recent.
Tell us about it for people who don't know.
You know, he comes from the perspective of it doesn't need, if you're spinning your wheels and you're never catching up, you've got the wrong sense of urgency. You've got an unhealthy urgency. He really basically develops the talk of there's healthy urgency and then there's unhealthy urgency. And so he kind of guides you on what that looks like.
Very cool. If you could get 15 minutes with any leader alive today, who would you want to get that with and why?
Wow.
It's a big question.
That is a question. You know, I think I would say President Obama.
Nice. Yeah, tell me about that. Why is that? Great leader.
I think because biblically, we're to pray for our leaders. Absolutely, regardless of our what we feel or what we want, we got to pray for them. I guess I've always been ecstatic that he is being an African American, being the first African American to be a president. I think that's phenomenal, and I would just love to just say, hey, we pray for you, and just not let the media always drive our thoughts about him. You know, regardless of what I think, and certainly.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. Yeah, he's a great leader. Seems like a great family man, regardless to politically what you think of him. He really does seem like he really cares for his family, his kids, his girls, and so, which is really cool. Well, I'm sure leading at the church takes up a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy. When you just want to kick back, kind of relax in your own personal life, what do you do for fun?
Wow, my kids and my family. Nice. Whether it be playing soccer with my son or playing Xbox with my son, or just have a sneak away date with my wife and just eating something, cookie or something sweet with my daughter. That is them, so
very cool.
Family time is what's going to help me keep me recharged.
Very cool. Well, Mark, I really appreciate you being on the show today. If people want to get in touch with you or with the church, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, you can go to our website. It's westoverhills.church.
Nice.
Westoverhills.church. And then, please feel free to email me, Pastor Mark at westoverhills.church.
Great. Thanks so much for being on the show today. Have a fantastic week.
Hey, you do the same. Thank you for the invitation. It was great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Don't be shy. We'd love to connect. Check out unSeminary Inbox. You can sign up at unSeminary.com and we'll send you helpful training resources every week. Plus, you'll gain immediate access to our exclusive members area with tons of resources you can use. Connect with Rich on Twitter at Rich Birch or through email, rich@unseminary.com. Don't forget to check out the show notes for this episode at unseminary.com. It includes links to what we talked about today and more. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Did you enjoy today's episode? Drop by iTunes and leave a review. Thanks again for tuning in to this week's unSeminary podcast. Join us next week when we'll learn more stuff we wish they taught in seminary.